Hello, ladies and gentlemen, we continue our show. Who wants to become the ruler of Tomsk? So let the first contestant in. Oh, Mr. Pasternak. Your skills.
Writing poetry, suffering, winning Nobel Prizes.
Do you know how to command an army?
I can send metaphors into the attack.
Okay, sounds good. The next one, Dmitry Likhachov. What is your opinion on the situation?
I propose humane governance, cultural development, and the protection of monuments.
Monuments. We are at war.
But that's no reason to behave impolitely.
Sounds fair enough. Okay. And the last but not least, Daniil Harms. He's hired. Okay. The team is assembled. Tomsk. Hold on. Tomsk is next. Let's start with its ruler, Boris Pasternak. He was born in 1890 to a simple peasant family. No, wait, that's not true. He was born to a famous Russian artist, Leonid Pasternak, and his mother was a pianist. From childhood, Boris was surrounded by people of art.
Are you sure about that?
The family home was often visited by such figures as Leo Tolstoy, Nikolai Ge, Sergei Rachmaninov, and other titans of Russian art. At first, little Boris tried his hand at music, even composing a couple of symphonies. But music didn't work out. Pasternak was a perfectionist, and in his own words, "I loved music more than anything in the world, but I didn't have perfect pitch." After finishing school, Pasternak enrolled in the philosophy department of Moscow University. It was around this time that Boris Leonidovich began writing poetry. A brief historical overview of the early 20th century in Russian culture. To give you an idea of how exciting it all was, in schools we call this time the Silver Age of literature. There was a huge number of creative people. Poets, artists, writers, so let's simplify.
Hello, my name is Borat.
Three movements dominated poetry: symbolism, acmeism, and futurism. Symbolism, which Pasternak initially embraced, appeals to the human subconscious, to the unspoken, to half meaning, using metaphors. Here is an example. My sister, life's overflowing today, spring rain shattering itself like glass. But people with monocles still complain and stinging politely like snakes in the grass. The second movement is acmeism. Poets of this school, on the contrary, advocated concreteness, explicitness, and objectivity. The most prominent representative was Lev Gumilev's father, Nikolai Gumilev. Time to hunt? The moon had risen. To the servant, now, I said. To the swamp's benighted prison, we should track where the beavers fled. But in response, he now smiled. Scarcely could he triumph hide. Master, cried, stop your beguiling. It's the eve of Christmastide. And the last but not least, the movement futurism, implying a call to the future and discrimination against the past. A delightful form of creativity. You will now appreciate this poem. Bobby Obi, sang the lips. Viomi, sang the eyes. Pio, sang the eyebrows. Liu, sang the face. Gzhi Gzhi Gzeo, sang the chain. Thras, on the canvas of some correspondences, beyond space lived the face. While Pasternak was searching for himself in poetry, two revolutions and the civil war occurred. Pasternak waited out the war in the Urals, and then had the opportunity to leave for Germany with his parents, but Boris refused. The poet had ambivalent feeling about the Bolshevik coup. On the one hand, freedom, equality, and brotherhood. On the other hand, anarchy, the destruction of the old world. In his novel Dr. Zhivago, revolution is depicted as a spontaneous force breaking out against one's will, and as a transformation of life that brings both freedom and tragedy. Pasternak would spend the next 20 years writing prolifically. moving from poetry to prose and translating. His translation of Hamlet is considered one of the most successful in Russia. After the Great Patriotic War, Pasternak wrote Dr. Zhivago, one of the best works in Russian history. The book is dedicated to a fate of the physician and the poet Yuri Zhivago, whose personal life and spiritual quest unfold against the backdrop of the revolution and civil war in Russia. The book shows how historical upheavals shatter human destinies but cannot destroy inner freedom, love, and the pursuit of meaning. It was published underground in Italy and achieved wild success in the West. In 1958, Pasternak was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature for Dr. Zhivago. This was a trigger. The Soviet government declared the novel slander against October, libel, and ideological sabotage. An organized campaign against the writer began. Newspapers published articles like traitor and slanderer. The Writers' Union passed a resolution of condemnation. Pasternak was threatened with deprivation of citizenship and deportation. Fellow writers, often under pressure, wrote angry letters and spoke out at meetings. He was harassed at work, on the streets, even in his everyday life. Eventually, Pasternak was forced to decline the Nobel Prize, writing a short sentence. Considering the significance of the society to which I belong, I must decline. All this inevitably affected Boris Leonidovich's health. In 1960, he died suddenly of lung cancer in isolation at his dacha outside Moscow. Dmitry Sergeyevich Likhachov was born in St. Petersburg into an intelligentsia family of the engineer. In 1923, he entered Leningrad University, studying language and literature. Already in his student years, he developed an interest in ancient Russian culture, which later became the main focus of his academic work. In 1928, Likhachov was arrested in the Academian's case.
Welcome to the Gulag. If you survive, you earn your freedom.
You can't keep getting away with it!
And sent to the Solovetsky Island. Until November 1931, he was a political prisoner in the Solovetsky Special Purpose Camp. Initially, he was assigned to hard labor. Later, while serving his sentence, he published his first academic work, Card Games of Criminals, in a local newspaper. From 1929 until his transfer to the mainland, he worked as a staff member in the criminology department, where he searched for runaway juvenile street children from among the exiled and convicted. Likhachov placed them in a juvenile labor colony, therefore saving them from a certain death. Before his release, he worked on the construction of the White Sea Channel. After his release in 1932, he returned to Leningrad, where he began working at the Institute of Russian Literature. During the Great Patriotic War, Likhachov remained in besieged Leningrad, continuing his research. After the war, he became one of the leading experts on Old Russian literature, publishing major works on the tale of Igor's campaign, chronicles, and the artistic principles of medieval culture. His research laid the foundation for the modern understanding of Russian medieval literature. From the late 60s and especially in the 80s and 90s, Likhachov became a leading public figure. He advocated for the preservation of cultural heritage, the development of education and the humanities, and wrote extensively on culture as the moral foundation of society. He was an academician, a laureate of state prizes, and the honorary citizen of St. Petersburg. Dmitry, however, was never a member of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, refused to sign letters against prominent Soviet cultural figures, and was not a dissident, striving to find a compromise with the Soviet regime. Likhachov lived not against the Soviet regime, but rather outside of it. He didn't like it, didn't particularly hide it, but he didn't fight against it. In short, he balanced between the government and the opposition, while doing many humane things and helping people. Dmitry Sergeyevich Likhachov died in 1999. Rest in peace. Hello guys, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and please suggest more ideas for a video. I'd like to finish our discussion of human rights activists with another outstanding figure, Andrei Sakharov. The future academician was born in 1921. After finishing school, he entered the physics department at Moscow State University. After graduating during the Great Patriotic War, he was recruited for a top-secret project to create an atomic bomb. Sakharov's contribution to the project was the creation of the hydrogen bomb, a more powerful version of the nuclear bomb. So it would seem You're a hero of the USSR, you have plenty of money, Stalin, Khrushchev and Brezhnev are forever grateful to you, and you can relax. But no, it seems around the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Andrei Sakharov began to feel remorse for creating weapons of mass destruction. So, academician Sakharov began his human rights activities. Sakharov largely idolized the West, calling on the USSR and its government to repent of its sins
I absolve you of your sins. You have been forgiven.
and embrace peaceful coexistence, democracy, friendship, love, and so on. And for a long time, namely throughout the 70s, he managed to publish appeals, open letters, and attend the trials of political prisoners. This seems like a good thing, but we just heard about Likhachev, who also opposed the Soviet regime but understood that it could not be overcome, so he helped people from within. I think it's more useful strategy. Sakharov was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 1975.
Yeah, that fits.
As we know from Pasternak, this was a boiling point for the regime. But Brezhnev's rule was softer than Khrushchev's, and Sakharov ultimately received the prize. Sakharov finally got the authorities fed up with his protests against the introduction of troops into Afghanistan. In 1980, he and his wife were met on the street by an official car and taken to Gorky, now Nizhny Novgorod. Andrei Dmitrievich's 3-year exile began. Exile wasn't a prison, but the restrictions were very severe. Complete KGB control over his movement, a ban on telephone and mail, a ban on travel, even to see his children in Moscow, confiscation of all the manuscripts, and stripping him of all of his ranks except academician. Sakharov went on hunger strikes in protest, but they were of little help. After each hunger strike, he was confined to a psychiatric hospital, where he was force-fed. In December 1986, that nightmare ended. Mikhail Gorbachev called Sakharov personally and announced the end of his exile.
If you think you can graduate from this school without kissing my cock, you are dead wrong.
This became one of the symbolic steps of perestroika, demonstrating a shift away from repressions. Sakharov even managed to participate in the formation of the first Soviet parliament, the Congress of People's Deputies. But Andrei Dmitrievich died in 1989.
Crazy hamburger! This is horrible!
Now let's talk about Daniil Yuvachev, nicknamed Harms. Daniil was born in St. Petersburg in 1905. His childhood and youth were all standard and quiet. Daniil forgot about higher education, adopted the pseudonym Harms, we actually still don't know what it means, and began writing poetry. The 1920s were still a relatively free time for Soviet citizens, so to give you an idea of the extent of what was permitted, there was a nudist society called Down with Shame, right in Moscow. Its members would organize naked marches through the streets of the capital. Daniil Harms had nothing to do with these parades, but he quickly became involved in the country's poetic life. He joined OBRU, an association of futurist poets. You remember those guys? They were very funny. Let me give you an example of Daniil Harms' story. Old women falling out. One old woman, overcome with curiosity, fell out of the window, fell and died. Another old woman leaned out the window and began looking down at the broken woman. But out of curiosity, she too fell out of the window, fell and died. Then a third old woman fell out of the window. Then a fourth, then a fifth. When a sixth old woman fell out, I got tired of watching them, so I went to Maltsevsky market, where they say a blind man was given a knitted shawl. Daniil has many such stories. While Daniil is writing and creating, the 1920s turn into 1930s, and our hero faces his first problems. You're probably thinking, aha, Harms was arrested for his delusional stories, which Stalin didn't like. You'll be surprised to hear that Harms' first arrest was for children's books. Daniil Harms wrote children's stories to keep from starving, and it was these stories that caught the attention of the OGPU. He had to spend 3 years in exile in Kursk. Even this not so easy life for Harms ended with the outbreak of the Great Patriotic War. Harms allowed himself the comment, The Soviet Union lost the war on the very first day. Leningrad will now either be besieged, starved to death, or be bombed to the ground. If they give me a mobilization form, I'll punch the commander in the face. Let them shoot me, but I won't put a uniform and I won't serve in the Soviet troops. I don't want to be such a piece of... If they force me to fire a machine gun from attics during street battles with the Germans, I won't be shooting at the Germans, but at them with the same machine gun. But I am not sure he actually said that. It can be falsified. So, a denunciation is filed and they want to execute Harms. But he feigns insanity and is sent to a mental hospital. During the siege of Leningrad in the winter of 1941-42, 1 million people died of starvation, including Daniil Harms. Such people were deemed as traitors, and in psychiatric hospital they were never fed. He was buried in an unknown grave. Dmitry Dmitrievich Shostakovich was born in 1906 in St. Petersburg. From childhood, little Dima was interested in music. In 1919, he entered the Leningrad Philharmonic, although the timing was not ideal. Famine began in large cities due to the civil war and the food tax on the Bolsheviks. In 1922, Dmitry's father died of starvation, and the hero of our story suffered from numerous illnesses that would plague him for the rest of his life. At least in this condition, he would have been good cast in the Wicked film. Oh, that's a terrible joke. Nevertheless, this didn't stop him from attending classes and performances at the Philharmonic every day. Towards the end of 1920s, Shostakovich achieved his first fame, and his first symphony began to be performed in the West. In the USSR, his first 2 symphonies also became popular, but problems began with the third. Rumor has it that Stalin himself considered Shostakovich's music incomprehensible for the masses. He postponed the premiere of the 4th symphony and went into internal exile. His salvation came with the 5th symphony, which he himself called a creative response to the Soviet audience. But his most famous work is the 7th symphony, written in Leningrad during the siege. I recommend it to anyone who isn't depressed. It's just a truly difficult piece. Overall, Dmitry Shostakovich, with his sensual, heavy yet profound music, became a symbol of the era of the struggle against terror, totalitarianism, and the deprivations of the 20th century. The great composer died in 1975. And right behind Shostakovich is his friend, Moisei Weinberg. Weinberg, as you might guess, was born to a Jewish family in Poland in the late 19th century. Growing up in a family of the conductor, it's no surprise that he entered the Warsaw Conservatory, where he studied under the renowned teacher Józef Turczynski. After the outbreak of World War II, Moisei fled to the USSR. Almost all of his remaining family members would be murdered in Nazi camps. In 1941, the Soviets evacuated Weinberg to Tashkent, where he befriended Dmitry Shostakovich. After the war, he continued to compose music and became famous in the USSR for his film scores. So if you grew up in the post-Soviet space, you've definitely heard his melodies. The composer died in 1996. Okay guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you subscribe. See you in the next one.